The declaration wasn't a roar. It was a whisper that rippled through the void like a spark in a vacuum. The Galactic Dominion, the oldest and most feared political and military entity in the Orion Arm, had just broadcast a message that would be remembered for millennia. A message they believed would bend yet another primitive species into submission. It was addressed to Earth. The Dominion's High Regent, a being of scales and cold silver eyes, spoke through the holonet with calculated authority. To the planetary government of Sol 3, you are in violation of Expansion Protocol 47. You will surrender your orbital stations, your colony moons, and your deep space assets immediately. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance ensures erasure. The words echoed across hundreds of star systems. Most species barely looked up from their own struggles. Earth was new to the Council, barely a century into interstellar recognition. To most, humanity was clever, resourceful, but naive. To the Dominion, they were nothing but a noisy frontier race, annoying but manageable. But deep under the surface of Luna Prime, in the sole diplomatic command hub, no one was panicking. Not a single human voice trembled. The counselors watched the transmission replay in silence. A slow smile crept across Admiral Reyes' face. His uniform was dark, trimmed with a thread of silver that caught the room's low light. "So," he murmured, "they finally said it." Dr. Anika Holt, chief strategist, leaned forward. "They've officially declared war." "No," Reyes said, his tone calm, almost amused. "They've declared extinction. For themselves." The Dominion's declaration spread through the human networks within hours. Across Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies, people reacted not with fear, but with a grim sort of unity. There were no fireworks, no marches. Just the silent hum of industry shifting gears. Shipyards that had slept for decades began to wake. Drone factories retooled without needing orders. Old war programs buried beneath layers of secrecy flickered online. The Dominion never realized that humans had stopped fighting each other for nearly 2 centuries, not because they were weak, but because they'd grown tired of small wars. They'd moved on to preparation, the kind of preparation that required patience measured in generations. From the Dominion side, it all seemed like posturing. Fleets gathered in the Sol system. Fine, that was expected. Small civilizations always made a show before kneeling. But when Dominion scouts entered the Kuiper Belt, they didn't find a fleet. They found silence. And then, one by one, their ships began to disappear. The last transmission from the lead scout contained a single visual frame, a flash of light, a strange ripple, and something enormous moving against the black. It wasn't registered on sensors. It didn't match any known engine signature. It was just there, watching. The Dominion laughed it off. "Optical illusion," they said. "Sensor ghosts." Until the same thing happened again. And again. By the 3rd week, the Dominion sent an assault carrier. Its hull was a city of weapons and shield arrays. It never made it past Neptune. Every sensor log it sent back ended abruptly in static. The Dominion began to sense something was off. Not just militarily, but fundamentally. On the 12th day of their so-called campaign, an emergency assembly was called on Arctron Prime. Holoscreens filled the council chamber, showing images from the border skirmishes. One admiral, his scales reflecting panic, slammed a clawed hand on the table. "We are losing vessels without engagements. They are not fighting, just vanishing. What are these humans hiding?" Silence fell over the hall until a smaller, older alien spoke, a historian of sorts. "There are records," he whispered, "of Sol's ancestors. They fought among themselves for thousands of years. Each war made them faster, crueler, more inventive. They do not fight for dominance. They fight for survival. And survival is not something they share. The Dominion laughed again, but softer this time. That night, an entire listening post station near the Sirius Gate blinked offline. When their recovery drones arrived, all they found was debris. But the way the metal had been cut, so clean, so surgical, terrified the engineers. Whatever had done this hadn't used explosives. It had taken the ship apart like it was, studying it. Then came the first human broadcast. No threats. No demands. Just a voice, calm, human, confident. This is Admiral Reyes of the Terran Unified Command. We acknowledge your declaration. You will receive no further warning. The message lasted exactly 6 seconds. But across every Dominion system, it repeated again and again until communications officers tore out circuits trying to stop it. And then, at the edge of their space, the stars themselves began to move. The Dominion thought it was a sensor malfunction until they magnified the images. Thousands, no millions, of points of light shifting formation. Not stars. Ships. They weren't sleek or ornate like Dominion warships. They were dark, angular, efficient. The kind of design that suggested purpose without vanity. And when the first fleet broke cloak, its scale dwarfed anything the Dominion had ever seen. The humans had come quietly, with engines that didn't register on scanners until it was too late. From the bridge of his flagship, Reyes watched the formation unfold. "Transmit signal to the Dominion," he ordered. "Message ready, sir." He paused, eyes reflecting the blue of the tactical display. "Tell them congratulations." "Congratulations, sir?" Reyes smiled faintly. "They just declared war on the wrong species." The message went out. And somewhere in the Dominion's command nexus, 1,000 alarms screamed at once. For the first time in centuries, the most powerful empire in the galaxy knew fear. And the war hadn't even begun yet. The Dominion's fleets gathered like storm clouds on the rim of human space. Thousands of warships glowed with reactor light, their hulls layered in energy fields, weapons charged and humming. From orbit, the assembly of ships was a spectacle of arrogance. Rows upon rows of vessels stretching across light seconds. In their command cathedral on Arctron Prime, Dominion tacticians traced trajectories across three-dimensional maps of Sol. They saw a small, single-system civilization with a scattering of colonies, and assumed it would fall in days. But by the time their first fleets reached the Oort perimeter, they realized that their maps were wrong. Entire sectors of space refused to respond to Dominion probes. Their navigation relays went dark. Ships that jumped and came out hundreds of kilometers off course, as if gravity itself had shifted. They hadn't been jammed. They had been rewritten. Humanity's electronic warfare was unlike anything the Dominion had seen. Their data vanished mid-transmission, overridden by elegant silence. Even the Dominion's own systems began to distrust themselves. The humans had reached into the Dominion's neural nets and whispered confusion. Admiral Reyes sat aboard the Vigilant Horizon, a wedge-shaped flagship drifting invisible within a sea of stars. Beside him, 100 command officers worked in absolute quiet. No chatter, no movement beyond necessity. Human fleet doctrine had evolved past noise. Every signal was encrypted through living AI cores that thought like humans but felt no fear. "Status?" Reyes asked. "Phase shroud stable across all wings. Targets remain blind." Reyes nodded. "They think they're alone. Let them." On the Dominion flagship Raction, High Regent Thale watched the darkness beyond his viewport. His sub-admirals reported nothing unusual. The human system appeared empty. No fleets, no resistance. It almost felt too easy. "Proceed to Neptune," Thale commanded. "We will seize their outer defenses and use their moons as staging grounds. The fleet advanced. The first warning came as a distortion, barely a blip. Then another. Then a whole line of them, each one registering for a fraction of a second before vanishing. "Contacts?" the Dominion sensor chief called out. "Negative," another replied. "Probably interference from their asteroid belts." But the distortion kept moving, faster, sharper, closer. Then one of the Dominion destroyers simply disappeared. Not destroyed, not exploded. Gone. "Locate it!" Thale barked. The screens filled with static. Then a transmission appeared. A still image from the destroyer's last recording. A black shape moving between the stars, sleek and silent, with no visible engines. Its hull emitted nothing, no light, no heat, no reflection. And then the recording ended. "Admiral, we have multiple losses on the perimeter. Identify the enemy." But there was nothing to identify. Only void. Within the vigilant horizon, Reyes watched from orbit as icons winked out on his display. "They're still counting our ships as sensor errors," he said softly. Commander Holt smiled. "You said they would. Let's remind them those errors have teeth." Across 1,000,000 kilometers, the human fleet uncloaked for precisely 2.7 seconds, just long enough for their railguns to discharge. Hundreds of tungsten-sheared projectiles cut across space faster than light delay sensors could track. The Dominion never saw the shots. They only saw the aftermath. Ships ruptured like glass. Power cores detonated, turning fleets into webs of molten debris. Command bridges filled with fire before the sound could even reach the crew's ears. In a single synchronized volley, an empire's confidence was reduced to vapor. Reyes watched the blast patterns through the tactical projection, each detonation mapped in quiet arcs of color. "Phase 2, he said. The human fleet vanished again, phasing out of every sensor in existence. The Dominion fleet hung broken, scattered by something it couldn't even see. On Arctron Prime, chaos erupted. Reports flooded in, whole formations gone dark, admirals dead, border outposts lost contact. The Dominion's network couldn't comprehend it. The humans were supposed to be new to galactic war, not artists of annihilation. "Find them!" Regent Thale shouted to his war council. "Find where they are hiding!" But the humans weren't hiding. They were everywhere. Tiny drones, invisible to radar, drifted into Dominion systems, carrying ghost codes that hijacked infrastructure. Shipyards found their reactors shutting down one by one. Communication hubs began transmitting human messages instead of Dominion propaganda. Everywhere the Dominion looked, the same phrase appeared on their displays. "You wanted a war. We will teach you what that word means." In the Sol system, Reyes stood before the holographic projection of the enemy territories, his expression unreadable. "They think this is vengeance," Holt murmured. "It's not," Reyes replied quietly. "It's education." He turned toward the stars. "Prepare the next wave. And tell them, humans don't conquer. We correct." Far away, as the shattered Dominion fleets limped home, the survivors carried more than fear. They carried the beginning of a legend. The galaxy had finally met the wrong species. The Dominion's counterstrike was supposed to be decisive. Within their grand tactical citadel, orbiting Arctron Prime, thousands of fleet strategists gathered to rebuild the shattered order. Massive star maps projected across the chamber showed Dominion territory blinking red with every loss. For centuries, their forces had been unchallenged. Now, even the edges of their empire felt haunted. Ships disappearing in empty space, colonies going silent without a trace of battle. High Regent Thale stood before the hologram, mandibles tight, his tone controlled but vibrating with fury. "We will form a trivector assault line. 50 legions. Full fleet command. I want the Sol system sterilized. He turned to his war masters. I will not be humiliated by savages who crawl between planets. Advisors nodded, too afraid to object. But deep in the back of the room, an elder scientist spoke quietly. Regent, permission to speak freely. Thale sneered. You always do, Vecker. What is it? Vecker's long fingers trembled as he adjusted the hologram's focus. We have studied their attacks. They never repeat the same pattern twice. Every engagement adapts in seconds. That is not strategy, it's instinct. Machines, Thale snapped. Automated learning. No, Vecker said, shaking his head. It's something older. Organic. Coordinated through intuition. The Regent dismissed him, unwilling to hear more. Deploy the fleet. Crush them. Across the Dominion, shipyards screamed with activity. Armadas assembled, hundreds of thousands of warships glinting like a swarm of steel locusts. Massive carriers armed with planetary cannons, cruisers lined with antimatter batteries. They formed up along the Sol corridor, their engines igniting in perfect sequence. The galaxy watched in silence. And then, from the shadows of space, the humans responded. A faint signal, a single pulse, crossed the void between the stars. It was an old Earth song. Classical. Beethoven's Ode to Joy. The Dominion ignored it at first, considering it human arrogance. But then, their navigation relays began flickering, then resetting entirely. Admiral Cothraw, commanding the forward fleet, leaned toward his console. Signal interference? No, sir, replied his engineer. Something's rewriting our coordinates. Wait, our ships are moving off course. Before he could finish, the starfield outside shifted violently. The fleet had jumped, but not to the coordinates they'd set. They were inside the wrong system. Their ships emerged near a dead star, trapped in a dense field of magnetic distortion. And orbiting that star was a single, enormous vessel. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen. No lights, no identification. Its hull was layered with mirrored panels that reflected the starlight like oil. The sensors didn't name it. The crew didn't have to. The humans had sent a message long before this war began, buried in myth, hidden in history. The Thanatos-class dreadnought. It didn't fire. It didn't move. It simply appeared, and the Dominion's entire fleet went silent. Back in Sol Command, Admiral Reyes watched the event through a holographic relay. Lock them, he said calmly. Locked, the AI confirmed. Transmit message. A calm human voice echoed across every Dominion frequency. Return to your world. You have 1 minute. The Dominion Admiral scoffed. Empty threats. And then, one by one, Dominion ships began to implode. Not explode, implode, as if crushed by invisible gravity. The Thanatos didn't use projectiles. It used fields. Space itself turned against the Dominion ships, folding their hulls like paper. Entire wings vanished without sound. The surviving ships scattered, engines burning at full. But no matter how far they ran, their systems kept replaying the same transmission, endlessly looping. Congratulations! You just declared war on the wrong species. In the following weeks, Dominion fleets refused to deploy. Shipyards mutinied. Civilian worlds began to riot. 1,000 species who had once served the Dominion now looked toward Sol and whispered one question. What are the humans? On Luna Command, Reyes stood beside Dr. Holt as reports flooded in. They're breaking faster than we predicted. Fear is an efficient teacher, Holt said softly. Reyes turned to the window, looking out at the growing silhouette of the Thanatos drifting back toward Earth orbit. We gave them a chance to learn, he said. Now they'll never forget. Far across the galaxy, the Dominion's High Regent stood alone in his ruined council chamber. The holoscreens were dark. His empire was silent. And in the stillness, a faint human voice repeated from the broken speakers, distorted and calm. "We warned you. We don't start wars. We end them." The High Regent of the Dominion stood amidst the smoldering remains of his command citadel, the acrid haze of burnt circuitry thick in the air. The once proud banners of the Dominion hung tattered, their golden insignia scorched black. All around him, the endless hum of communications had fallen silent. The fleets were gone. The colonies no longer responded. Even the emergency relays, the final fail-safes of his empire, had gone dark. For the first time in his life, Thale tasted fear. He had underestimated them, these humans. He had thought them naive idealists, too sentimental to wield power without restraint. But the images replayed endlessly in his mind, fleets collapsing inward, ships crushed by forces they couldn't comprehend, soldiers begging for orders that never came. A voice echoed through the broken chamber, deep and distorted. "High Regent Thale, do you yield?" He turned sharply. The sound wasn't coming from the comms. It was vibrating through the very walls. Who speaks?" A figure stepped out from the flickering holographic dust. It was human, tall, calm, dressed not in armor, but in a diplomat's uniform. His presence was quiet, almost serene, yet every word carried the weight of inevitability. "Ambassador Jonathan Hale," the human said, his tone polite but glacial. "Representative of the United Terran Directorate." Thale spat the name like venom. "Directorate? You mean the Council of Warmongers, who pretend to be peacekeepers?" Hale tilted his head slightly. "We pretended once. No longer." The High Regent tried to steady himself, standing tall. "If you came to gloat, human, I have no patience for it. You have made your point. The Dominion will withdraw from Sol and all adjacent systems. We will issue reparations. You will have peace." Hale's expression didn't change. "Peace," he repeated. "That word used to mean something to us. But you broke every treaty, every accord, every attempt we made to reason. You slaughtered colonies. You fired on rescue ships. You enslaved civilians for sport." He stepped closer, his image flickering with static. "You think this is about territory? About politics?" Thale's throat tightened. "Then what do you want?" The human's voice became quieter, colder. "We want you to understand." Suddenly the air shimmered, and the holographic chamber transformed into a projection, a full simulation. Thale gasped as his surroundings dissolved into open space. Before him hung a Dominion fleet, his fleet, frozen in time, seconds before its destruction. "You see this?" Hale's voice echoed across the void. "These ships were armed with weapons capable of exterminating entire planets. You aimed them at Earth. And yet we didn't respond in kind. We erased the threat without touching your worlds. That's restraint, Regent." The hologram changed again. Now it showed Earth, serene and blue, ringed by vast orbital cities, and defense grids humming with silent power. "This is what you call primitive," Hale continued. "Every one of those satellites could turn your empire into dust before your first transmission finishes sending." Thale trembled. "Then why haven't you done it?" Hale's gaze softened, almost pitying. "Because we don't destroy out of anger. We destroy out of necessity. You'll live, but you will live knowing what real power looks like." He paused, then added with quiet gravity, "Consider this our last act of mercy." The image faded. The chamber returned, leaving Thale alone again in the darkness. His breath came in shallow gasps. The Dominion, the mighty Dominion, was nothing now. A shadow of arrogance erased by beings they had once mocked. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than any fleet could travel. Every empire, every race that had once bowed to Dominion supremacy now whispered the same phrase. The humans gave them mercy. But mercy, it seemed, came with a cost. In the following days, Dominion ships tried to flee toward neutral territories, only to find human patrols already there, calm, silent, unmoving. Not firing. Just watching. The unspoken message was clear: we see you. We're always watching. Even the criminal syndicates of the outer sectors began sending envoys to Sol, not out of fear, but out of awe. Humanity had become the story whispered in dark corners, the apex predators that smiled while holding a sword behind their back. On Earth, deep within the underground citadel of Geneva Command, Ambassador Hale stood before the Terran Council. "Regent Thale has accepted unconditional surrender," he reported. "The Dominion fleet has been disarmed. Their colonies will be monitored under the Reconstruction Protocol." The council members nodded in approval. "Any retaliation expected?" asked one. Hale shook his head. "No. Fear is more effective than force." General Reyes entered then, her uniform still dusty from her last deployment. "We could have wiped them out," she said. "Why let them live?" "Because," Hale replied, "a destroyed enemy is forgotten. A humiliated one teaches the galaxy to never repeat its mistake." Silence followed. Everyone in the room knew he was right. Humanity didn't just win a war. They rewrote the laws of galactic politics. Beyond the walls, Earth's skies shimmered with new construction. Ships larger, faster, more advanced than anything before. The world that had once been dismissed as fragile now stood as the galactic axis of fear and respect. And somewhere, in the silent halls of the ruined Dominion Citadel, High Regent Thale sat alone, the final human message echoing endlessly through the static. "We offered peace. You chose war. Now you live by our mercy." In the days that followed the Dominion surrender, the galaxy entered an uneasy calm. Trade routes reopened, but the silence that hung over every transmission was laced with dread. No one dared mention the humans directly. No one dared provoke them again. Yet beneath that fragile peace, rumors began to spread, rumors of something far greater than a war fleet. In the outer spiral, a reconnaissance probe belonging to the Athar Confederacy transmitted its last message before vanishing into nothing. Its final image, distorted by static, showed a shape, massive, angular, and shrouded in a blue haze. The probe's data logs identified the object with a single tag: origin, human. The Galactic Council convened in haste. Representatives of every major power gathered in the Hall of Echoes, a colossal structure orbiting the planet Tyros Prime. The air was heavy, tense. None of them wanted to admit it aloud, but the fear was palpable. "The humans said the war was over," hissed Counselor Valar of the Trin Syndicate. "Yet our sensors report new energy readings in the void near their outer colonies. Whatever they're building, it's not peacekeeping technology." Another voice, deep and aged, replied from across the chamber. "Perhaps they are rebuilding as we would," said Elder Nomak of the Veroan Collective. "Or perhaps they are preparing for something we cannot comprehend." At the center of the hall, the holographic dais flickered to life, revealing an image of Earth. It glowed softly, its orbital defenses twinkling like a crown. But behind that serenity lay something the galaxy couldn't see: the Soul Curtain, a classified human defense grid that extended millions of kilometers in every direction. Nothing entered or left without permission. And hidden within that curtain, deep in the shadow of Neptune, Project Vanguard had awakened. Aboard the orbital complex Ares Prime, Admiral Elias Mercer stood before a viewing window larger than any cathedral. Beyond the glass floated a ship unlike any built before, a fusion of human design and alien relics, a relic of something far older than the Council itself. Its hull shimmered with adaptive plating, absorbing starlight into liquid metal veins. No identifiable engine pods, no conventional drive signatures, just a pulsing heart of quantum plasma thrumming with infinite energy. Beside Mercer stood Dr. Kira Yolani, Chief Engineer of Vanguard. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "It's ready, Admiral. The Erebus protocol has been verified. Once it activates, the entire system will cloak beyond dimensional resonance. Not even the Council's omni-scanners will detect us." Mercer nodded, his gaze unflinching. "Good. The Council's already sniffing around. They think we're licking our wounds." Kira hesitated. "Do they know?" He turned toward her. "About this? No. And they never will. Let them believe we're recovering. The truth would break them." As he spoke, holographic feeds projected the galaxy's rim. Dozens of human fleets, seemingly idle, stationed across uncharted systems. But these weren't remnants of war. They were construction arms, assembling colossal structures that stretched across light years, each emitting faint ripples through space-time. "Every empire thinks we're consolidating power," Mercer continued. "But the truth is, Earth isn't expanding. We're preparing." "Preparing for what?" Kira asked. He looked out into the stars. "For what comes after the Council. For what scared even them into silence." Her brow furrowed. "You mean the signal?" Mercer's expression darkened. "Yes. The one we intercepted during the Dominion War. It wasn't a transmission from the Council. It came from beyond the galactic rim." A chill filled the room. "Something's coming," he said quietly. "And we're the only species that's seen it before." Meanwhile, back on Tyros Prime, the Council's political turmoil deepened. Alliances fractured. Some demanded preemptive strikes against Earth, while others pleaded for diplomacy. None agreed on how to approach the Terrans without risking annihilation. Counselor Valar slammed her claws on the table. "We cannot allow them to continue unchecked. They hold technologies that violate every galactic treaty, gravity drives, subspace shifters, planet core reactors, and they do not share." From the shadows, a cold voice answered. "Perhaps it's because they remember what happened the last time they shared." The chamber turned silent as Ambassador Hale stepped forward. His sudden appearance made every species' hackles rise. He wore no armor, no insignia, just that same quiet confidence. "The Directorate extends its greetings," he said politely. "We've come to assure the Council that humanity seeks cooperation, not conflict." "Then why are your ships building weapons beyond our sensors?" Valar snapped. Hale smiled faintly. "Who said they were weapons?" He let the words hang there, his tone calm but lethal. "Sometimes, what looks like a sword is really a shield. And sometimes it's both." Before anyone could respond, his image flickered out. The Council chamber filled with uneasy murmurs. No one could tell if it was a threat or a warning. Back on Ares Prime, alarms sounded. A new energy surge had been detected, something vast, deep in uncharted space, moving toward the galactic rim. Kira stared at the readings. "That's not a ship, it's a structure. It's folding space around itself." Mercer's jaw tightened. Then the signal wasn't just a warning, it was a beacon. He turned to the crew. "Activate Erebus Protocol. Contact Earth Command. Tell them it's time." As Ares Prime darkened, vanishing into the void, humanity prepared, not for conquest, but for the storm no one else could see coming. And far away, in the dead silence between galaxies, something vast shifted in the dark, ancient, patient, and awake. The Council feared humans because of their weapons. They had no idea those weapons were built for something else entirely. The Council chambers were quiet, unnaturally quiet. Even the constant hum of translation nodes seemed to fade, as the galactic representatives absorbed what their deep space sensors had just revealed. The image projected above the circular dais was grainy, distorted by radiation storms, but unmistakable. A structure was emerging from the void, a vast, rotating ring, its diameter spanning several moons. Around it, smaller constructs drifted in geometric formation, radiating soft blue light. Counselor Valar's spines trembled as she whispered, "It's not human, is it?" No one answered. The structure defied known physics. It warped gravitational fields, created distortions in the background radiation itself. Whatever it was, it had been built outside the Council's knowledge, outside anyone's jurisdiction. But one species, one planet, had ships already in motion toward it. Earth. A dozen Terran warships, their hulls matte black and devoid of identification, approached the anomaly in a silent wedge formation. No escort, no communication. Just a steady, ominous glide through the darkness. Grand Arbiter Sale, the oldest member of the Council, broke the silence. "Open a channel to the Terran Directorate." Static. Then a response. "This is Admiral Elias Mercer," came the calm voice. "State your business." "This construct," Sale said, his tone almost pleading. "It is appearing within our monitored sectors. We request, no demand, to know its nature." Mercer's reply was delayed. When it came, it was colder than ice. "You're not authorized to know. It's not a threat to the Council unless you make it one." The connection terminated. In the hall, pandemonium erupted. Dozens of voices shouted in overlapping frequencies. "Unauthorized activity. Violation of the Galactic Concords. This is an act of war." But even as the politicians bickered, out in the void, something else stirred. The massive ring began to rotate faster. Energy flared along its circumference, like veins of fire racing across the stars. Instruments everywhere failed to keep up. The readings didn't make sense. Negative energy densities, reversed entropy flows, time dilation ripples spanning light minutes. And then it opened. A shimmering slit of white light appeared at the ring's center, stretching wider until it resembled the iris of an eye. It wasn't a wormhole, not in any known sense. It was something deeper, older. A hole punched through the fabric of reality. Human ships didn't hesitate. They accelerated, vanishing one by one into the light. On Tyros Prime, the Council watched in disbelief. "They're entering it!" someone shouted. "What are they doing?" "Following instructions," came a voice none expected. Every delegate turned. Ambassador Hale stood once again in the chamber, uninvited, unannounced. His usual calm expression was gone. In its place, a faint, unreadable sadness. "You should not have watched," he said softly. Sale rose, trembling with anger. "What have you done, human? What is that thing?" Hale looked up at the projection, his eyes reflecting the impossible light of the anomaly. "That," he said, "is a message. But it's not for you." The floor beneath the chamber shuddered as Tyros Prime's orbital network suddenly went dark. One by one, its satellites fell offline. Then came the second tremor, a deep, resonant vibration that wasn't seismic, but spatial. "Something's broadcasting from Earth," cried a technician. "It's overriding the entire subspace band." The voice that followed was ancient and mechanical, distorted as though filtered through centuries of static. "This is the Terran Command Archive." Sequence, Project Vanguard initiated. All human assets returned to core space. Non-Terran entities are advised. Observation protocols engaged. Then silence. Counselor Valar gripped the edge of the table. "What in the void does that mean?" Hale turned to her. "It means you've been talking to the diplomats." He paused, then said quietly, "Now you'll meet the ones they represent." And with that, he vanished, his form dissolving into a halo of blue static, leaving only the echo of his voice. In the darkness above Tyros Prime, the void rippled again. Another object emerged, not through the portal, but through folded space. It was immense, dwarfing even the largest Council dreadnought. Its shape was angular, monolithic, and its surface shimmered like liquid mercury. At first, it appeared lifeless. Then the lights began to bloom across its hull, one row after another, until an entire hemisphere of stars seemed to awaken on its surface. A whisper passed through the Council. "Gods preserve us." But this wasn't divine. This was human engineering taken to its absolute extreme. The ship, if it could still be called that, sent a single, narrowband transmission. "This is the UNS Nemesis. The threshold is open. Humanity is returning home." And then, from the depths of the anomaly, more shapes began to emerge. Hundreds. Thousands. Every one of them human. The portal expanded until it filled the void like an artificial sun, rippling with pale light and gravity distortions. Around its edges, the first wave of Terran vessels took up position, silent, disciplined, moving as one. Not a single transmission leaked, not a single life sign could be scanned through their hulls. They didn't move like a fleet, they moved like an organism. Inside the Galactic Council's command spire, chaos and all warred for dominance. Dozens of species shouted over each other in a storm of fear, anger, and disbelief. Impossible. How can they field so many ships? They were weakened after the Dominion War. Where did they get this technology? But those who had seen humanity fight before said nothing. They just stared. A single Terran transmission cut through the noise, clean and resonant across all bands. "Galactic Council, this is the Terran Directorate. Stand down your probes and cease all scans of core space. Your surveillance has been detected and terminated." The voice was calm, not angry, not even defensive. Just final. In orbit above Tyros Prime, every Council sensor relay blinked out within seconds. Entire fleets scrambled to readjust, but their systems reported nothing but static. The humans hadn't jammed them. They had simply removed them from every known frequency. In the void, Admiral Elias Mercer stood aboard the bridge of the UNS Nemesis, watching as the Council systems collapsed in silent panic. His eyes reflected the swirling light of the dimensional aperture before him. "Sir," said Commander Arendt, his voice low, "the Council's fleets are powering their weapons." "Orders?" Mercer's tone didn't change. "None. Let them aim. They won't fire." "Why not?" "Because they've just realized what that thing really is." On the bridge's forward holodisplay, the anomaly's readings came into focus. Gravitational curves, temporal signatures, even the faint echoes of biological matter. It wasn't just energy. It was something alive. Dr. Kira Yelani entered the bridge, her expression unreadable. "It's a transit gate," she said quietly. "But not ours. The core frequencies match the artifact fragments we found beyond the Orion Veil, the ones older than recorded time." Mercer nodded. "So the myths were true." "What myths?" Arendt asked. Mercer turned to the viewport. "That humanity wasn't the first. That someone came before us, someone who left behind the keys to crossing death itself." He pressed a command key. Outside, the Nemesis's flanks opened like vast iron wings, revealing banks of reactors that hummed with a deep, harmonic tone. Across the fleet, other ships mirrored the motion. Their cores synchronized. The light from the portal pulsed in response. Inside the Council chambers, the reading spiked again. "They're linking to the anomaly!" a technician shouted. "Every Terran vessel is feeding power into it." Valar hissed. "They're opening a wormhole into our territory." "No," whispered Elder Nomak, his voice trembling. "They're opening a door to somewhere else." And then, the impossible happened. From within the portal, a colossal silhouette emerged, vast enough to eclipse a moon. It was broken, half-decayed, as if it had drifted through eons of war and silence. The markings on its hull were alien, yet eerily familiar. Human letters, faded and scorched, could barely be read along its side. UNES Odyssey. The ship that vanished 20,000 years ago. The first vessel humanity ever sent beyond the galactic rim. Counselor Valar's voice cracked. That ship, that's ancient. It shouldn't exist. Ambassador Hale appeared once more, this time not as a hologram, but in person, standing before the council in a pressure suit marked with the Directorate insignia. His face was calm, but his eyes were heavy with memory. You called us myths, he said softly. You thought humanity began with the colonies you met. You thought our history started when you found us on Earth. He gestured toward the holographic projection of the Odyssey, now drifting like a ghost through the portal. You were wrong. The chamber fell silent. That ship is a relic of the first Exodus, Hale continued. Our ancestors went beyond the stars long before the Council's founding. Before your species even learned to walk upright. They vanished into the void, and they left warnings, buried in every atom of our DNA. Sale's voice trembled. Warnings of what? Hale's answer was almost a whisper. Of what's coming back. The chamber shook again, this time from a resonance wave so deep it bypassed the laws of sound. The portal flared white. On the other side, something massive stirred. Kira's voice over the human comms was barely steady. Admiral, there's movement beyond the Odyssey. We're detecting hundreds of signatures. No, thousands. Mercer's gaze didn't waver. Not enemy? She shook her head. Unknown. And then, for the first time since humanity had returned to the galactic stage, Elias Mercer smiled. Not out of pride, but recognition. Then they found us first. He turned to his crew. Hold position. Do not engage. Let's see who remembers the name of Earth. The council watched in utter terror as the void rippled once more, and ancient ships, bearing designs not seen in any database, began to emerge behind the Odyssey. Their hulls glowed with long-dormant light, and every single one bore one unifying insignia burned into their cores. A single blue circle around a white star. Humanity's first flag. The portal pulsed once, twice, then erupted in a cascade of white light that swallowed half the stars around it. Every scanner, every satellite, every sensor in this sector went blind. When the glare faded, a collective gasp swept through the council observation decks. They filled the void. Hundreds, no, thousands, of vessels drifted through the portal in perfect formation. Some were small and dart-shaped, like predators from ancient oceans. Others were titanic, the size of continents, their hulls etched with markings that had eroded over millennia. Each bore the same insignia, the white star of old Earth. But it wasn't just the number of ships that froze the galaxy's blood, it was what they looked like. They were human, and yet not. The designs were organic, fluid, grown instead of built. Their hulls seemed alive, shifting subtly, adapting to the gravitational currents. They were evolving, even now, under the eyes of the galaxy. And in the center of that vast, resurrected fleet drifted the flagship, the UNES Odyssey, restored to terrifying glory. On the Nemesis, Admiral Mercer's bridge fell silent. His officers stared at the readings, their eyes wide. Are we seeing ghosts? Whispered Commander Arendt. Mercer's gaze locked on the largest of the incoming vessels. No, he said. We're seeing our ancestors. Kira Yelani was pale. But how? The Odyssey was lost 20,000 years ago. There's no way anything survived that long. Not unless time didn't pass for them, Mercer said. Not in the same way. The communications officer turned, voice tight with disbelief. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Odyssey itself. Mercer's heart hammered once, twice. Patch it through. The bridge lights dimmed. A figure flickered into existence above the hollow platform. A woman, tall, her features eerily human but faintly off. Her eyes shimmered with bioluminescent light. "This is Fleet Admiral Seraphine Corps," she said, her voice resonant, almost musical. "Commander of the first human exodus. To those who came after us, we have returned." Mercer stepped forward slowly. "Admiral Corps. You're human?" She smiled faintly. "We were. Once." The council chambers erupted in panic as the transmission went public across the networks. Delegates shouted, translators failed to keep up, and alarms began to wail. Sale, the Grand Arbiter, slammed his staff into the floor. "Silence!" But even he could not steady his trembling hands. "What are they?" he demanded. "Machines? Abominations?" Hale's holographic projection reappeared beside the council dais, arms folded. His tone was deceptively calm. "They're our history. The first ones to leave Earth before it burned in the purge of centuries. They sought something beyond the stars, and apparently they found it." Valar's eyes narrowed. "And you brought them back?" Hale's gaze was cold. "No. They came back on their own." The holographic feed shifted again, showing Admiral Corps standing in front of a vast, glowing structure, an artificial world orbiting within the anomaly itself. "Our mission was to find the origin of life," Corps said. "We found something else." Her tone darkened. "The architects. They were ancient beyond measure. They built the gates between galaxies. But they are gone now. Their worlds are hollow, their suns extinguished. We took their knowledge and their warning." "What warning?" Mercer asked quietly. Corps looked directly into the feed. "That what destroyed them is coming back." Silence. On Tyros Prime, the council stared in horror. The air itself seemed to grow colder. Corps continued, her expression hardening. "We were changed out there. Evolved. We survived by merging with what they left behind. The ships you see now, they're part of us. We are the extension of humanity's will, carried beyond death and time. We've returned not to conquer, but to prepare." Mercer's voice was calm but firm. "For what?" Her eyes glowed brighter. "For the Reclaimers." The word rippled through every translation system like a curse. Even the machines hesitated to repeat it. "The Reclaimers were the Architect's final creation," Corps said. "An autonomous mechanism meant to preserve the balance of life in the universe. But when the Architects died, their creations turned feral. They cleansed worlds, systems, civilizations." She paused. "They cleanse everything." The hollow feed flickered as waves of energy rippled through the Odyssey's hull. "They are coming, Admiral. The signals you've detected along the rim, the bursts of static across deep space, they are the Reclaimers' advanced scouts. You've already seen their work, though you didn't recognize it." Kira's voice was barely a whisper. "The disappearances in the Perseus Reach." Corps nodded. "Entire clusters gone. We traced the pattern. They will reach this galaxy within 2 cycles." The council chamber erupted in shouting again. 2 cycles? That's impossible." But Corps' expression didn't change. "Prepare your fleets. Unite your species. Or you will all vanish, as the Architects did." And then her image leaned closer, as though she could see through every camera, every watcher, across every world. "Earth stands at the center now. The decision will be yours." The transmission cut. Admiral Mercer stood in silence. Then, slowly, he turned toward the stars. "All hands," he ordered. "Initiate Protocol 9. Commander Arendt swallowed hard. "That's total mobilization, sir." Mercer nodded. "If the first exodus is right, then the next war isn't about territory. It's about existence." He looked toward the light of Earth, distant but burning like a promise. "Let them come." The galaxy began to move. For the first time in known history, Fleets that had once been enemies aligned their trajectories toward a single point, Sol. The Council had no choice but to comply. The humans' message had been short, sharp, and final. If you want to live, come home. And so they came. From the shining cities of the Kalari Ascendancy, from the high forges of the Varn Dominion, from the drifting megaships of the Koru Union. They came, trembling, uncertain, afraid. Above Earth, the largest armada ever assembled in galactic history hung in orbit like a crown of fire and steel. Thousands of ships, billions of lives, all staring down at the blue world that had birthed the species that now held their fate in its hand. In the center of that vast fleet stood two flagships, Nemesis and Odyssey, side by side. The living relic and the modern warship, past and future united. On Nemesis, Admiral Mercer watched the streams of data flood in. His officers were silent, focused, tense. Across the void, Odyssey's presence pulsed faintly, a living heartbeat that seemed to sync with his own. "Admiral," said Kira quietly, "you really think they'll fight beside us?" Mercer's eyes didn't leave the tactical map. "They'll fight," he said. "Fear does what diplomacy never could." A light flared on his console. Incoming transmission, Odyssey. Cora appeared, her expression grim. "The Reclaimers are closer than predicted. We've intercepted their vanguard at the Galactic Rim. Their technology is self-replicating, adaptive, and utterly without consciousness. There's no reasoning with them." Mercer exhaled slowly. "You fought them before." Cor nodded. "Yes. Once. We lost half our fleet stopping a single probe." The Council delegation aboard Earth's orbital station had been listening. Panic broke through their conveneer. Sail of the Weichkar struck his staff against the deck. "Then what chance do we have against their full force?" Cor's luminous eyes turned toward him. "If humanity stands alone, none. But if every world fights, if every mind and every blade unites under one cause, there is still hope." Hale appeared on the bridge hollow next to Mercer. "We've already begun integration. Every allied ship will receive fragments of Odyssey's technology, adaptive hull plating, energy lattice upgrades, AI coprocessors. But it won't be enough unless command is unified." Cor nodded toward Mercer. "Then humanity must lead." The declaration echoed across every channel. Some races protested, others fell silent. But none denied it. Humanity had faced extinction more times than anyone remembered, and had never stayed dead. Deep in the void, the first wave arrived. The Reclaimer swarm wasn't a fleet in any recognizable sense. It was a storm, metallic organisms bound together by shared intent. Their forms were fluid, ever-shifting, endlessly reconstructing. Some the size of insects, some the size of moons. They moved like a tide of molten silver, eating starlight as they came. Every system they touched went dark. And then, the Rim defense line lit up. Human and alien warships stood shoulder to shoulder, thousands of guns opening fire in unison. The void burned white with plasma, ion bursts, rail slugs, and antimatter detonations. But the Reclaimers didn't fall. They adapted. Their outer shells shifted, absorbing the energy. Their next wave came faster, stronger, more efficient. Kira's voice cracked through the comms. "They're learning! Every shot we fire, they're countering it within seconds." Mercer's jaw tightened. "Then stop shooting to kill. Shoot to confuse." He switched channels. "Fleet-wide order. Shift targeting to random intervals, randomized wavelengths. Break their synchronization. Don't let them learn our rhythm." Across the line, the tide faltered. The Reclaimers hesitated, recalculating. It bought them seconds, but in this war, seconds were eternity. Cor's voice cut through the static. "We're initiating Protocol Eidolon. Prepare for dimensional ignition." Mercer frowned. "Eidolon? The weapon we built after our first war with them. she said. A ripple in space-time. It can erase mass entirely. But it draws from our fleet's living core. Too many activations, and we cease to exist. Mercer stared at her. You're using your life to fuel it? Core's expression softened. We were never meant to live forever, Admiral. Only long enough to make sure our descendants did. And then she was gone, her fleet moving forward, forming a perfect sphere around the enemy's swarm. Light built between them, a blinding radiance that shook space itself. Eidolon ignition in 3. The bridge lights flickered. Every ship felt it. A sound, not heard but felt, resonating in bone and thought. 2. Mercer closed his eyes. 1. The universe screamed. Space folded inward, tearing itself apart. A ripple of pure nothing expanded, devouring the swarm, tearing through the Reclaimer's core, turning matter to silence. For one terrible, beautiful moment, everything was light. Then, darkness. Silence. When vision returned, the rim was empty. The Reclaimers were gone. But so was half of the Odyssey's fleet. Mercer's hands trembled as the readings came in. Core. Her face appeared one last time, faint and fading. The path is open now, she said. They'll come again, but not today. We've bought you time. Admiral, he whispered, you don't have to. Take care of Earth, she said softly. Make sure humanity remembers why it fought. And then the signal broke. The stars were quiet again. A week later, the Council reconvened on Earth. This time, no one spoke over the humans. No one dared. Grand Arbiter Sale bowed his head before Mercer and Hale. We owe you our existence. Mercer didn't smile. You owe it to them, he said, glancing toward the distant memorials being built in orbit. The names of the first Exodus burned in starlight. Hale looked at the gathered species. The Reclaimers aren't gone. They're rebuilding, somewhere beyond the edge. But now the galaxy knows what stands in their way. He turned, his eyes like cold iron. And they know better than to mistake human politeness for weakness again. The chamber fell silent. Beyond the glass dome, Earth turned slowly beneath them, blue, alive, defiant. A single transmission pulsed through the void, picked up by every listening ship, every beacon, every relay across the stars. Congratulations, it said. You just declared war on the wrong species.